Hello, I'm Nick Lowes from S&P Global, and I'm talking today with Joseph McMonigle, the Secretary General of the International Energy Forum. So welcome to CERAWeek, Joe.
It's great to be here.
Welcome. Perhaps you could start by telling us a little bit about the mandate and the activities of the IEF.
Yeah, the IEF is the International Energy Forum. We're based in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, but we have 72 member countries. And it was founded about 30 years ago for producer and consumer countries. So we have OPEC countries and IEA, OECD consuming countries. And of course now with 72 members, we have more member countries than those two groups combined. But it's the only group that kind of is a neutral platform to discuss both consuming and producing country interests. And increasingly, we are a developed and developing world dialogue also, because we have 30 members from Africa, and they, as we hear at this conference and other conferences, they're raising their voice now on all of these issues. So it's an important area for us.
And what brings you to CERAWeek?
Well, there's so much going on right now with the energy crisis and with the transition, and I'm often asked, is the energy crisis a setback for the transition? And I don't see them as mutually exclusive. The answer is we have to do both. We have to keep our ambition high and keep pursuing the energy transition very aggressively, because climate is such an existential threat. But at the same time, we have to keep making sure that we have energy security and supplies to power the world economy until we find the technologies that are going to replace hydrocarbons in the future to address all of our climate goals.
And with all that's been going on in the energy markets, are you seeing or have you seen a change in the dialogue, the nature of the dialogue around the energy transition?
Yes, I have. I mean, obviously, like you and many of the folks at CERAWeek, we go to a lot of conferences. And I was just talking to somebody in a meeting that, a year ago I would go to conferences, and it was still, even after the energy crisis that started, well into the end of the last year, it was there was still there was no gray area. It was sort of black or white, whether you were for climate or against climate. And now I sense a more pragmatic approach, that this is a complex problem, that we need everybody to be working together, so we can't exclude energy companies from the solution. We need everybody to help us scale up the technologies and the transition. So I'm definitely seeing an understanding that this is a complex problem, and I think there's a desire, at least from our part, one of the things we're trying to do at the IF is to create a more inclusive consensus on the energy transition that recognizes it's complex. We still have to keep doing it, but we have to keep our eye on energy security. And one of the reasons I talk about investment in upstream oil and gas is because I'm worried that if the public starts to equate high energy prices and volatility with the transition or climate policies, we're in big trouble, because we'll never get the public back on something so central to their daily lives. And so that's why we need to manage the transition. We need everybody working together on this to help us find solutions.
Now, you mentioned underinvestment potentially in oil and gas as driving oil price volatility, gas price volatility. Are there any other drivers that you see that might be causing this volatility in the energy markets?
Well, it all stems from underinvestment. There are a lot of different reasons for the underinvestment. I mean, you have companies, worried about capital discipline is the word that they use. You have ESG investing criteria that I think is impacting investment in the sector. And then you have uncertainty from other events that are kind of out of people's control, like COVID was certainly one. You have the pending recession and gloomy economic outlook that I think creates uncertainty. And then, of course, there's a lot of geopolitical issues that impact on uncertainty. So all these things weigh together, but the underlying root cause is really an underinvestment. And I know it's something that S&P Global and Dan Yergin talks a lot about. And it's an important problem that needs focus. And if we don't focus on it, and we just, if the plan is to reduce energy supplies before demand sort of gets reduced, that's a recipe for disaster. You're just creating a situation where high prices and volatility are the new normal.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things I know we've been talking about is a bit North-South divide in the dialogue, just going back to that question of the dialogue. How would you characterize that, and do you see that? Do you see that difference in the view from, let's call it the global North and the global South?
Yeah, no, it's real, and I think you're hearing it at conferences like this. The Africa voices want to be heard, and they're not going to go away. I think that's something we have to recognize now. This is sort of their frustration about the current energy landscape and what they're being asked to do in terms of the transition, but not industrialize. This is a big frustration, and we're starting to hear it, but those voices are going to get louder as we get to COP and other big events on the calendar. And we hear a lot at conferences like this about stranded assets, but in Africa they have stranded lives right now. And the world needs to focus on energy access and affordability the way we focused on COVID. We all came together to focus on COVID, the way we focus on climate change. And until we do, we're never going to have a lot of progress on this sustainability and a net zero approach.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the conference once again, and I hope you have a really successful time. Any sort of final thoughts? Just what you'd like to see come out of this conference? Anything that you would like to see from an IEF perspective?
Well, there's obviously a big focus on finance and energy, and it relates to this underinvestment issue that we talked about. But the IEF is conducting our own sort of initiative, the Global Energy Solutions Initiative, to kind of create this new and inclusive consensus on the transition. And so we're talking to a lot of people to get feedback, and we would invite people to get in touch with us to give us their ideas and solutions.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your insights.
Thanks, Nick.
We appreciate it and enjoy the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.